Hi y'all, my name is Megan Green, aka Mercurial Megan. I'm an astrologer based out of Gainesville, Florida. I love pop culture and I love to use celebrity charts as an example of transits and interpreting planets in the chart. There has been a recent development with Keke Palmer. She has filed for a restraining order and for full custody of her child from her previous partner, Darius, on the basis of a domestic violence issue within their family. This is a sensitive subject, and there's parts of me that feel like I should not even be doing this. So if you feel that way also, I get it. But there's also a larger part of me that sees the value in being able to kind of pinpoint some of these energies, and to just maybe recognize how some of these themes or storylines may show up in your life if you're kind of going through something similar. So let's just get into transits, or Keke's chart actually. So this is Keke Palmer's birth chart. As best we know it, she is an astro girly, so she has confirmed a lot of this, I believe, as well. So Keke Palmer is a Virgo sun, a Sagittarius moon, and a Cancer rising. This is an interesting big three. It's got some mutability, some cardinal energy, and it's very nurturing and very humble, but it's also fun and pretty spunky. And I think that those are all, words that we would use to describe Keke, just thinking about her. She's kind of America's sweetheart right now. So Keke has this Virgo sun, which makes her very diligent and hardworking. It seems like she takes her craft very seriously and she really works on developing her skill. And Keke seems to be very sort of down to earth or kind of earthy in that Virgo way of just being, kind of accessible and humble and kind of low key. She also has a Sagittarius moon, which is her big personality, her big expression, her humor, her multi-talentedness, I think, comes from that mutability with the Virgo and the Sagittarius, just being able to perfect and do multiple things at once and to kind of see things through a perspective of expansion and growth. And then she also has this Cancer rising, which is very nurturing. It's very emotionally charged. It is, kind of sweet and very, I think Camille Michelle Gray made a post, a fellow astrologer made a post not too long ago about Cancers being really connected to American culture, and Keke has this Cancer rising that just kind of makes her beloved within our culture. I think for the most part, she has a very positive reputation and is just known for being someone who, makes everyone feel comfortable. So she's got this big three that I think has really served her well. But there have been some tricky transits for her chart. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up. Actually, I saved. So these are the transits for this morning. So I woke up this morning and, the first thing you do is look at your phone, and the first headlines were about Keke filing for this restraining order, alleging abuse, and also trying to get full custody of their son together. So I just kind of pulled up the chart from the moment that I became aware of this situation. And the first thing that I knew just intuitively, as astrologers, you start to kind of know what some of the big transits are. And if you know some of the big three, you can come into a pretty quick understanding of some of the themes this person might be dealing with. So knowing that Keke Palmer was a Cancer rising, knowing that the sign opposite Cancer is Capricorn, knowing that Pluto has been coming to the end of a very significant transit in Capricorn, I knew that this was going to be impacting her on a personal level as a Cancer in identity, and then also in her one-on-one relationships with Capricorn being in her 7th house. And then I also thought that she may have, a late degree ascendant. And then of course I pull up the chart, her ascendant's at 25 degrees Cancer, making her descendant 25 degrees Capricorn, and Pluto is currently at 28 degrees Capricorn. So it's sitting pretty close to her descendant, and then it's also sitting directly opposite her ascendant as well. You go ahead and throw in that she also has a Cancer Venus, which is a Venus that loves to be in love, it loves to be comfortable, it loves to be emotionally connected. It's right on her ascendant, so that Venusian vibe is so much a part of her personality, and it is also getting this double whammy from Pluto along with the ascendant. So there's this big impact on her identity and perspective from the ascendant's point of view, and then also her connection with love, attraction, what she attracts, how she attracts it, and just her expressions of love as well are going under a major battle, power struggle with this Pluto in her 7th house of other people, really kind of bringing in powerful relationships. And Pluto in the 7th house doesn't always have to be negative. Sometimes these relationships can be incredibly loving and transformative, and I'm sure when she was getting into this, she probably thought that that was the direction that it was going, but it also can really have to do with power dynamics, really toxic energies and cycles of abuse, and just really dark themes, kind of underworld themes. So she was getting hit by Pluto in a major way in her relationship sector, which also kind of speaks to, so if the 1st house speaks to Keke's experience, then the 7th house speaks to that other person's experience to some extent. And so he is probably going through some really traumatic upheavals in his personal life that are sort of bleeding and spewing out onto her. I believe, he's a first-time father. That has got to be something that really kind of, changes his life in some major way, and that may also be sort of provoking some of this explosion from Pluto. But then if you also look at what else is in her 7th house of partnerships, you see Uranus and Neptune. They're both at 18 degrees Capricorn, so this is a pretty powerful energy for her. Uranus will make partnerships or relationships with others sort of unpredictable, because Uranus is the planet of sudden shakeups and surprises, but that can also make them very progressive and innovative and unique and sort of exciting as well on a positive end. And then she also has Neptune there, which is a planet that is sort of deceptive. Neptune is like a fog, so we don't always see things clearly when it's in a certain house. So that can be either like wearing rose-colored glasses or being manipulated. So there's sort of a high end and a low end of how that can be expressed, and oftentimes we will experience both ends, making it complicated to discern, exactly what's going on there. So if we tie in that there's already this major Plutonian energy in her 7th house, and then we also add in Neptune's unclarity and Uranus's unpredictability, it does create a cocktail of really big responses from others onto her ascendant and Venus, and her trying to process all of that. Also knowing that she is a Virgo, I know Saturn is newly in Pisces, so that's sitting directly opposite her sun and any other planets that she has in Virgo. Interestingly enough, she has Mercury there as well, and then she also has Juno, which is an asteroid that represents ideal partnership or equality within partnership. And if we look at the transits, so if this is Virgo down here, we also have this being a Juno return for her, as Juno is at 9 degrees approaching her natal Juno at 11 degrees. And all of this planetary energy tied in with a close conjunction from Chiron in the 28th degree of Leo. So it's pretty conjunct that, so even though it's in two different signs and we value the differences and the separation between the two signs, when a planet is that closely connected to another planet, as this Chiron is to this Mercury, which is the ruler of Virgo and the ruler of the Sun and the ruler of this Juno, that's a sort of fusion of energy. So Chiron is a planetary body that represents the wounded healer. There is some sort of wounding in this area of our life that requires healing, and through that healing we heal ourselves and others. So that Chiron is in very close connection to Mercury, her sun, and Juno, the asteroid of partnership, in the sign of Virgo, making this a huge theme in her life right now. Virgo energy is often trying to fix something. So there is a part of her, especially with this Juno here, that probably loves a fixer-upper or loves to feel like she can, inspire some sort of growth or change in her partner. It's in her third house of communication, so I imagine like she's great at pep talks. Like she can really inspire you through her speech probably, and through like a practical plan of like, okay, this is how we do this and this is how we'll figure it out. And ideally with Juno there, this would be someone who could meet her at that level and to sort of meet her at that same energy level and have that same strength as well. But I wonder if oftentimes she finds that she's trying to create that in someone that she thinks that she can fix. With this energy sitting directly opposite Saturn, I take a look at what's going on at Saturn. Transit Saturn is at 0 degrees Pisces, sitting directly opposite this energy. So if we go ahead and click that Saturn, it's sitting directly opposite her Chiron, her Mercury, and her Sun. And Saturn is the planet of discipline and restrictions. And in the 9th house, the 9th house is a legal house. So she's definitely about to go through some legal adventures with Saturn going through the 9th. And it is also our faith and our spirituality and our belief systems. So I think this is also a time of her faith being tested, and really kind of having to also review the rules and laws that she's written from herself. I'm really the more that I work with the 9th house, the more I see it as like the rules that we have decided we have to live by, but maybe falsely so. We can change those rules or boundaries or beliefs at any time. So I think with Saturn newly entering there and sitting directly opposite so many of her personal planets, this may be a time of her kind of figuring out what her new rules and boundaries and beliefs are. If you also look at where this Saturn is, she is just leaving her Saturn return. And so her natal Saturn is in the 8th house of Aquarius. I don't know much about her partner's chart, and I don't want to give his chart the time of day. But one thing I do know is that he is an Aquarius. So I know that his sun already shows up in this 8th house for her. And I know that that's where her Saturn is. Sun meeting Saturn in the 8th does not have to always be a negative experience. Again, this could be something where you really learn about maturity and merging together and going into a deeper level of intimacy. But that depends on the growth and development of both people involved and both charts involved. And I think he possibly, based on some of the evidence, might have been bringing a lower vibrational sun into that 8th house. So the 8th house has many different meanings, but some of them are financial and some of them are sort of like psychological and dealing with power balances. So I know Keke is the higher earner, So with a Saturn in the 8th house, perhaps her partners will not have the same financial means that she does. It does not seem like this partner did. But again, a different interpretation of that could be that her partners help her manage her resources or have a more mature way of managing joint business ventures. I also know that the 8th house has to do with power dynamics and intimacy, and in a low vibrational state, this can be abuses of power, this can be abuses of intimacy. So she is just coming out of that Saturn return. So that Saturn return would have been a 2.5-year cycle through that 8th house of Aquarius, where she was learning lessons and experiencing blockages and setbacks having to do with intimacy, merging, and joint financial ventures. And now she is at 0 degrees of Pisces. And sometimes when we enter a new sign, we are reaching the fulfillment of that previous sign. So I think now that she's coming out of that area or Aquarius cycle, she's realizing what needs to change, what needs to be done, and she's stepping into the new cycle. But you know, all of that stuff from the past is still kind of like resurfacing at this time. So it seems like that has a lot to do with what's going on for her right now. She also has Chiron right now, transit Chiron in her 10th house. The 10th house is her public persona. It's her career, it's her reputation, it's her authority, it's what she's known for. Chiron, again, being about wounding, is highlighting that in a very, very public way for Keke right now. So that's a few of the transits. Oh, one other thing that I wanted to mention is what's going on in her 4th house of Libra. So she has her natal Mars and Jupiter in the 4th house of Libra, making home and family already kind of a complicated situation for her. But she also currently is having the nodal cycle of Aries and Libra, the eclipse cycle, go through her 4th house of home and family and her 10th house of career and reputation and legacy. She is closing out a family cycle. I do not know if there is a history of domestic violence in her family or, you know, domestic imbalance. I don't know. The moon is there, which represents the mother. I know Keke's mom has recently spoken out about this issue, I think, as the moon was in this area of the chart. Venus is newly in this area as well, bringing feminine themes into the equation. So I don't know if this is like a legacy or a generational issue for them, but I do know that the South Node, as we're hitting these eclipses, is intending to sort of close out a cycle there, or to get her to move away from that and to really step into the power of her 10th house in Aries, where the North Node is. She has the potential, and especially with Chiron there right now, to really become a voice and a leader for empowerment, for standing out and kind of being independent and going on her own and being brave, and to also be simultaneously closing out these generational chapters. And if you think about this energy, Libra is square to her ascendant in Cancer. It's square to that 7th house Pluto that we were talking about earlier. So it's really speaking to her identity and partnerships. And we just had that eclipse cycle in Libra. So we're going to see this kind of unfold within the next 18 months for her through this eclipse cycle. We're going to see that 7th house kind of come to an ending as Pluto moves into Aquarius in January. And then we're also going to see her have this new Saturn experience in the 9th house, where she goes through this legal experience. So I think Keke is looking at a good 2.5, 3 years of really reevaluating and kind of emerging into something new. And as devastated as I am for her, I know she is going to do something amazing and significant with this platform. So I hope that that was a helpful way to kind of dissect the chart. I do want to take this time to say that if anyone who is seeing this video is dealing with any sort of domestic violence issue in any way, shape, or form, please feel free to comment or message me or find me on socials. I would be honored to help you find assistance or resources, or to just be a lending ear to anything that you might be experiencing right now. I have a personal, very complex experience with domestic violence as well. I understand how vulnerable and isolating and damaging this time can be, and the process that it takes and the journey that it takes to get through this. If someone with as much resources and a platform and support as Keke Palmer can be going through something like this, none of us are immune from it. So I really just want to encourage you to find any sort of connection or support that you can, and if I can be of any service to you in that way, I would be honored. I sincerely hope that this video finds you well and that this week treats you kindly, and I will see you hopefully with a more positive scenario in a future video. Bye, y'all.